All right, I call the April 11th, 2022 school board meeting to order. It is 7 p.m. We are in conference room C of the Fisher Administration Building at 12121 West North Avenue. Ms. Newman, please call the roll.
Ms. Fraley? Here. Dr. Jessup Anger?
Absent.
Mr. Meyer?
Here.
Ms. Mufeld? Here. Mr. Phillips?
Here.
Mr. Rolland?
Here.
Mr. Doman?
Here.
Nadia Yule? Here. Will Flurl?
Here. Thank you. We'll move on to our first item of the evening, public comment on non-agenda items. Members of the Wauwatosa School Board value the input of students, parents, staff members, and community members. The board's regularly scheduled meetings provide an opportunity for opinions and concerns to be expressed publicly. The board values all comments and will respectfully consider this input in decision-making. The board requests that individuals limit their comment on each item to 3 minutes. Following any comment, an individual board member may respond on the issue raised. However, it is not the intent of the public comment portion of the agenda for the board to enter into a debate with members of the community. Because non-agenda items are not publicly posted in advance, no action will be taken on public comment regarding non-agenda items this evening. And we'll start with folks in the room first, and then we'll go to anyone online. So if you're online, please raise your hand virtually and we'll get to you. So we'll start with public comment from those in the room.
Good evening. My name is Diane Dagelin. I'm a member of the Wauwatosa Senior Commission and chair of our Senior Recreation Committee. I'd like to read a letter of gratitude to the school board. Dear Wauwatosa School Board, our Wauwatosa Senior Commission commends you and Superintendent Dr. Demond Means for your support of senior recreation and wellness in Wauwatosa. Without your commitment and involvement, many seniors in Wauwatosa would be isolated from others in their community. You have been responsive to our requests in providing resources and programs that promote physical and mental health, as well as intergenerational relationships. Specifically, we would like to thank you for inclusion of a senior liaison for the Recreation Department's long-range planning a proposed senior tax-exempt program, STEP, which provides property tax relief while connecting seniors to volunteering in the city's public schools, and expanding pickleball resources for indoor winter activity in a safer outdoor facility. All of these initiatives will better the lives of Wauwatosa seniors and their community. Thank you. I'd like to state that also on our committee is Michael Meyer and Margaret Arney. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you for coming tonight. We appreciate it. Any other public comment from those in the room?
Sure. So I'm State Representative Robin Vining. I represent Wauwatosa, Brookfield, and Milwaukee, and I did want to stop in tonight and acknowledge Sean Rolland. We are incredibly grateful for your 6 years of service. I know this is your last evening here tonight. And as I thought about your 6 years of service and what it's been like to work with you, we know you're brilliant. We know you do your research. We know you're a gifted communicator. But one of the things that I know that I see behind the scenes is how much you really deeply care for the district families. And that is a gift that you've given us. Thank you for your hard work, for your research, for your communication. And thank you for loving the families of Wauwatosa School. So thank you for your service, and we appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other public comment from those in the room?
There's just one thing I'd like to bring up really briefly. It's surrounding the December 2021 culture survey that all of the staff had responded to in the district. And I am just throwing out there that I think if the school board hasn't already seen this, that they should look into this, that it is essential to understanding of staff in our buildings. And I also think this directly correlates with teacher retention, as many teachers and staff have responded to this. And I think it is important to look at some of the results regarding company confidence, collaboration and communication, and feedback and recognition, along with several others in the district based on this survey done back in December 2021.
Thank you. Well said. Any other? Go ahead, Ms. Freeland.
I just wanted to call out an event that happened last week that I know was previewed to the district. Dr. Means was there. Other board members may have been there and I just missed you. With a special thank you to the Standell family and Danielle Long and the group that brought Wake Up Call to Tosa West last week. It was an incredible turnout of families. I would guesstimate easily well over 120. Fantastic presentation on drugs and alcohol and behaviors that we're trying to help our students avoid. And I just thought it was a great example of community collaboration and district involvement, and saw a really fantastic mix too of families from East Side, West Side, middle school, high school. And quite frankly, the presentation was super well done. I couldn't believe that 90 minutes went by so quickly. And I think we could have been there for longer, but it was a really well done presentation, and the information much needed, and very much appreciate the folks that came together to bring that to fruition.
Thank you. Any other public comment from those in the room? Seeing none, Jamie, is there anyone online?
There are no hands raised.
All right, I'll move on to our next item, the consent agenda. Are there any items on the consent agenda in which board members would like to remove for separate discussion and action?
I just have a comment on the general agenda.
Okay, why don't we get a motion and then we'll go to your comment. Is there, seeing none, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Move to approve.
Thank you. Is there a second?
So moved, or second.
Mr. Martin, go ahead.
Actually, now seeing this, I'm seeing my comment is appropriate for the retirement section and not for here. So I've got to pause it.
Okay, we'll come back to you.
Yeah, I apologize, sir.
Not a problem. Any other board comment on the consent agenda? Ms. Bufo?
I do, thank you. I am very excited to see the summer school item on the consent agenda this evening. And just thank you to all of the educators who are involved in the program. It's very important for the kids. Thanks.
Any other comments on the consent agenda? Seeing none, is there any public comment on the consent agenda? You can just come to the microphone, state your name and address. You have 3 minutes.
Hello, I'm Vijay Urmans. I am a member of the Wauwatosa Commission for Persons of Disabilities, and very grateful for all the work that you do. And I am wondering if it is possible, my address is 2749 North 75th Street. Is it possible to turn the captions on the television? I see that caption is available.
No, that's not how it works. You have to be Zoom. This is a feed from right here.
You just click on the closed caption and
There is no closed caption.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I can speak to that.
I would ask then that this would be looked into for future meetings, because unfortunately the acoustic are not great for my cochlear implants. So I'll do my best to listen. But it's a beautiful setup, and it's a shame that it's missing a very key feature. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's a great comment. Any other public comment on the consent agenda from those in the room? Any hands raised, Jamie, online?
There are no hands raised.
Ms. Newman, please call the roll.
Ms. Braley?
Yes.
Mr. Meyer?
Yes.
Ms. Neufeld?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. Rowland?
Yes.
Mr. Doman?
Yes. Up next, recognition of district retirees. Ms. Foch.
Good evening, Jennifer Foch. I'm the Director of Human Resources for the district, and we just wanted to take some time tonight to publicly recognize those employees who are retiring at the end of this school year. We are planning a more formal event to recognize staff who have reached the 25-year milestone in the district, and also our retirees, and also include the folks who've missed out on the last couple of years with an in-person event. So while we were able to do some video recognition and virtual things the previous 2 school years, we're going to include those former employees in our celebration in person this year. So without further ado, we have 2 administrators who are retiring this year, Ms. Jenny Keats, the principal of Underwood Elementary, and Ms. Therese Kwiatkowski, the director of special education. We have a few teachers as well, Ms. Ann Anderson, who's a teacher at Lincoln Elementary, Mr. Todd DeZeo, a teacher at West High School, Ms. Suzanne Graber, teacher at Washington and Montessori Schools, Ms. Jennifer Gordy, who's a teacher at Washington Elementary, Mr. Andrew Hancock, who is our GED Option 2 coordinator at East High School, Mr. Brian Hoffman, a school counselor at West High School, Michelle Muschel, a teacher at Underwood Elementary, Mr. Bradley Rinzel, a teacher at Longfellow Middle School, Ms. Deborah Sellers, a teacher at Underwood Elementary, Ms. Angela Showman, teacher at West High School, Ms. Kathy Schultz, teacher at West High School, Ms. Kathleen Sekula, a teacher at Underwood Elementary, Mr. John Simon, teacher at East High School, Ms. Ann Jansen, who is the administrative assistant at Lincoln Elementary, Mr. Jeff Gabrielson, the athletic director at West High School, Ms. Carol Kivlin, who's an administrative assistant in business services, Ms. Joanne Nordstrom, who's also an administrative assistant in business services, and Ms. Jean Fippen, who's a special education assistant in our Next Steps program. So we thank these people for all of their years of service and dedication to our community. We certainly couldn't have done it without them, and we wish them well in their retirement. Look forward to honoring them in person this year as well.
Thank you, Ms. Foch. That's great. We do thank them for all their years of service. That was quite a list, a lot of memorable names on there. So thank you for bringing that forward. Mr. Mayor.
I just wish to take this opportunity. I mean, all these people are very special, and thank you. As you take your journey through life involved with the school district, there's always someone who just by happenstance you had extra contact with, and you had personally opportunity to benefit from what they do for us. And so tonight I'm going to really miss Jenny Keats, who's retiring as principal of Underwood. She had been at Wilson long ago, and she came into the district about the time I came on the board. And a special thank you to Bradley Rinzel, the retiring teacher at Longfellow. Sir, you helped us so much. Thank you.
Any other board comments? Thank you, Ms. Foch. We'll move on to the special education and student services audit. Ms. Doyle? No, you can come sit here. We won't make you stand though.
Hello, good evening, everyone.
If I may, just to tee up things for Ms. Doyle. This is actually our 4th audit that we've been in. And I want to start by thanking the Board of Education. When I was hired nearly a year ago now, one of your charges was to conduct an audit of essentially every aspect of our organization. And not to audit to criticize or to say what we're not doing. It's Ms. Foch has left the room, but she was a Latin teacher. And so I like to always ask, what's the root of a word, of our English words from Latin? And audit has the root of hearing or listening. And so when you think about that connection to the Latin word, what we're trying to do with our audits is not to put a flashlight on what we're not doing, but to actually talk about what do we need to do moving forward? What do we need to listen to? How do we need to perceive and move forward? And so we've asked Sue Doyle from our CISO 1 partners to come out and work with our families and our teachers and to give us perspective. Sue is a veteran administrator of student services and has led a metropolitan school district in this work in the past and knows it very well. She'll talk about her partner that helped her with this audit as well, who is a well-respected across the state expert in the area of special education. And I think it gives us a really good lead in on what we can do to improve ourselves. But I also want to just highlight and talk about the fact that there are, and you can see it in audit, there are things that we're doing well right now. And so often with audits, we forget about what we're doing well, and we can't forget those things, but there's also and always opportunities for improvement. So Ms. Doyle, thank you for being here this evening, and we're looking forward to the dialogue with you.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Means, and thank you to the board and to the families and community members that are here tonight and those that participated throughout, the staff as well throughout this audit. The purpose of CISA 1 coming in to do an audit is not for us to tell you what you're doing wrong or right. It's to give you some feedback. But really, CISA's mission and vision is helping our districts grow their capacity. So as the Director of Special Education and Pupil Services, our focus really started with when Dr. Means called us in student services, and it morphed into, and we included some of special education in this audit. Dr. Barbara Van Heeren also was assisting me with the audit, and she could not be here this evening, but she has extreme incredible experience in providing special education leadership in our districts and within our state. So I was happy to have her expertise working with me as well. So tonight I will share a few highlights of the report. The audit was intended to review and start looking at mostly staffing and adults first and some of the programming that was being offered. It was not intended to focus on a deep, comprehensive special education audit regarding curriculum, instruction, some of the methodologies, or even as deep as student level analysis of progress. So that could be the next step of this after you have some set leadership moving into next year. So as we reviewed the current status of special education and student services in the Wauwatosa School District, we took a view as having a theory of action of why we were conducting this study. It really started with our conversation in Dr. Means as far as looking at our capacity to help build building leaders and teacher leaders within our buildings, to provide more capacity within themselves. So there's more teacher support and teacher capacity so that students can be better engaged. Teachers have more time to engage and build success and have students connected to their classrooms. We use multiple methods of data collection. During the audit ran from approximately mid-December to mid-February. The final report went to Dr. Means. And in that short time, we tried to conduct as much as we could, and looking at our data analysis, review of relevant records, both that the district provided and that we were able to garner from state reports. We had some in-person focus group meetings. We did a few individual interviews and some surveys. Some surveys we ran directly correlating with the audit, and the parent survey was again a piece of data that we were able to gather from the 1920 Indicator 8 parent survey that was required, that the district participated in. As you look at the numbers on the report, our participation in the focus groups, both by staff and parents, was relatively small in comparison to the size of your district. Respondents of our surveys by staff, again, relatively small. What we were able to garner in putting it all together, though, were some pretty common themes that were coming through. So while we didn't have large participation due to a variety of reasons, part of it is teacher capacity, family capacity, we did hear pretty common themes. First, I would like to acknowledge again the high quality service the special education and student services teams have been providing under the current leadership. Wauwatosa is viewed as being a leader in the region. And with that said, I know the district is always striving to continually improve. We did a SWOT analysis when we were conducting our focus groups, so I'll share some of those strengths. Positives include high quality committed staff. We heard that throughout, that while staff are here, it didn't matter if it was a teacher, an educational assistant, an administrator, staff really care about the students that they're serving here in your district. People felt that the current facilities and spaces for learning were very conducive to that. The district's longstanding reputation is being of a good district in the region. There's a strong sense of collective responsibility on behalf of the leaders and the educators. They prescribe to the belief that each and every student is a general education student first. And what I mean by that is special education is a layer to support students. It's not replacing what they get with their typical peers in their typical classrooms. It's special education is to provide access. Student services should allow for access and engagement with their typical peers. That is obvious when you look at the inclusive learning environments that have been created so students with disabilities have those opportunities to engage with their peers in the general education classrooms, along with some high expectations. Not that they're just there, but we have some high expectations as well. You have students with IEPs who are also included in some advanced placement classes at the secondary level. Special education is described as being responsive to inquiries and parent concerns. Although, sometimes families aren't always getting the answer that they want. It was mentioned that we understand the reason behind that. So I thought that was a positive as well. Diagnosticians, evaluation coordinators, case managers were all praised during the focus groups. And we found that there's some resources available to support students with families at home as well as school. And family members were really appreciative of the learning opportunities such as Parents United. And that is one of those regional services that the district engages with. Student Services is praised for having a solid academic and career planning process. Having access to either a school counselor or social worker in each building was important. And there's been an increase in social emotional learning and support for the students as well. Student Services staff is viewed as well qualified, committed with a broad range of experience, backgrounds, flexible, willing to try new things, embracing and doing what's best for students. Some of the people we interviewed came from some other very large, well-known districts, and so you are attracting high-quality staff. Also, what we noted were some individual buildings provide unique services to their building. And I think that's a tribute to some of the site-based leadership that's been in the district in past years. So there were some really nice pockets of excellence in some buildings. Some buildings had really strong multi-level systems of support. Others had school-based mental health supports, and the other buildings are doing a really nice job with their co-serving their students. And I say that because I think all of these are opportunities to learn from what's really working well in your district and what could be replicated in other school sites. So opportunities for growth. As Dr. Means and I sat down to start this conversation, you're facing many changes in administration due to some retirements and resignations. But instead of just sitting back, Dr. Means recognizes the unique opportunity to take a look at the overall structure and revisit and reinvent current systems and structures through the lens of continuous improvement and equity. Noted areas of growth include addressing some of those inconsistencies and inequities that occur between the buildings so that all students can receive those high quality opportunities to learn and grow despite their address and access. I know that you've already been addressing some of the leadership challenges and that you were able to hire Mr. Pinion, Luke Pinion, as your new leader of the student services team. I believe that you'll have someone with some considerable experience that will help to steady and guide the team and take some of the recommendations and put them into action. Given district level leadership in student services and special education, focusing on rebuilding a team and service delivery consistently throughout the district will be key in each of those areas. Rebooting co-serving at each building is critical. I believe that your staff had some significant training and professional development on how to co-plan to co-serve. That really sets students up, not only students with disabilities, but other at-risk students for the greatest success in your classrooms. And I think there's an opportunity there to design some non-negotiables of what does that really mean and look like, and then what are our structures to ensure that staff is supported to carry that out. I think that would be a really critical piece to start with. Capitalizing and scaling up pockets of excellence for alignment and cohesion across all schools is important. For example, that multi-level systems of support, really taking a look at all students universally, how are they doing? And then what are those tier 2 and tier 3 supports, both academically, behaviorally, and social emotionally, is necessary for students really to have the best access and supports prior to even needing an evaluation. So when we think about continuing to keep those referrals and special education evaluations lower, what are we doing to be proactive and support them before they need that additional support? In order to build that inclusive community, continuing to plan for the needs of students with disabilities in the universal curriculum and general education setting to increase access and engagement so that they can make progress along with their typical peers should be first and foremost. We're always looking at that universal level, just like with all students first. So when I make that comment, I'm also thinking about all of your district opportunities for strategic planning, curriculum planning. Do you naturally have an equal voice of students with disabilities and student services on those planning committees? So things that might be barriers for some students that we might not think about since we don't have a disability or a child with a disability, perhaps we just get that lens as you're planning, and it doesn't need to be an afterthought or taking a plan to a group. We're inviting people in for that. I think that's a more collaborative approach in district planning for improvement of district initiatives. Regular communication with families of students with IEPs and the creation of a parent support group should be explored to enhance two-way communication as well as foster collaboration. That's a challenge, right? Communication can be tricky because sometimes it seems like we're providing a lot of information back and forth, but it might not always be the right information. So opening up that avenue might be an option. There is an opportunity to include a diverse group of parents to serve on those district committees, as I talked about in the past. Some other recommendations from the report. We talked about building the capacity of current and new leadership, especially in the area of continuous improvement. As we look at those quick cycles of improvement, that's important for leadership to be focusing on students who are underperforming and marginalized as they're looking through that lens of continuous improvement. And using our school rapid improvement cycles would be a way to foster that educational equity for all students. Creating a common understanding in district services, initiatives, and resources could be done by conducting an initiative inventory, resource mapping, and even a resource and equity audit. Engaging in these activities will assist in the identification of gaps and overlaps and help set priorities for the district. creating those structures and consistent systems to proactively approach service delivery across district and school levels. We talked about the school-wide student services team and that multi-level systems of support, building level and problem-solving teams, ensuring that there's a strong response to intervention, some designated common planning time to support co-serving, coordination of building level special education, social emotional learning, behavioral interventions, and school-based mental health services. So those are consistently offered across school buildings. Create a district-wide professional learning plan that includes some of your existing expectations for co-serving, co-teaching, social emotional learning second step, and then taking into consideration the results of the initiative inventory when building the professional learning plan. And participate in family engagement planning to enhance two-way communication. In addition to this audit, I had the opportunity to provide some professional development to a group of support staff, so your educational assistants, and also a small group of your, I believe I had elementary music, phy-ed, and art teachers on a professional development in November. And I just wanted to again say, high quality, really well committed and dedicated staff. Some of the additional feedback that you'll read in the report talked about retention, and I heard that this evening, but I feel that Dr. Means and the board has already addressed that through some of your last actions that you've taken as far as salary structure and other steps. So there is much more in the report itself. I know that you've had access to that, as has some of the community members. Some of the people sitting behind did participate in the focus groups, and I just want to thank everybody again for their time and take your questions.
Thank you, Ms. Doyle. Did you have anything additional, Dr. Means, before we got into questions? I just want to thank you for coming tonight. Really appreciate it. I really appreciate Dr. Means taking to heart what the board has asked him to do and taking on this work. I think the biggest thing that a school board can do is hire a superintendent that's dedicated to this work. And I'm very thankful that we have that in Dr. Means, and appreciate all the families that participated as well. So I will start with any board comments or questions. Mr. Mayor.
Yes, I just encourage interested readers. There's an executive summary and then there's a full report. The text content of the full report is about 20 pages of the 77. So you will get a much more complete look at the results if you go to the 20 pages. I found that to be, it was hard to get so much content into the executive summary. So there's kind of some things you feel like, I really should read this full report and tell people, look at the 20 pages in the full report. You don't have to do the 50 pages of charts and data that follow.
Right. Thank you. And I wanted to ensure that all of the 50 pages of the charts and data was in there. So yes. Also for people to understand, we didn't edit any of the comments in the surveys and the focus group information as well.
Right. So certainly, I'm not saying don't look at the 50 pages, but if you want a briefer reading, you might as well just go to the full report and read the 20 pages rather than the 7 or 8 or so pages in the 7 pages in the executive summary. Yeah.
Thank you.
Ms. Meepo.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for the report. Very detailed. I'm also looking forward to maybe hearing from some of the folks in the room and what your perceptions are. My question though is there's a lot of, there are a lot of things we need to do, and would you be able to help us prioritize? Certainly we want to have the most impact we can as quickly as we can, because anyone who has a child wants things to be, handled expeditiously. And, given that's not something we can do immediately, I'm just wondering the timing how we can prioritize so we can really put some actionable items and have some good experiences now as a result.
Yeah. Dr. Means and I have been talking already, the resource and equity audit, that initiative mapping to start seeing everything, not only for special education student services, but looking at what other initiatives are all taking place in the district and helping to narrow what the focus is. I think that would be we've talked about it. That would be a good place to start. So we're already scheduling it. Dr. Bean's already reached out. We're scheduling a few of those things. And as you continue to do that data dive and that data dig and building those multi-level systems of support across each and every building I think would be the next most logical step. One thing that we heard from our parents was saying some comments as far as it feels like if you know how to access, you'll do okay, but people don't always know how to access or what that looks like. So I feel like those pieces will be the most beneficial because then it doesn't matter which building you're in, you're going to have access to some of those pieces. In addition, you're going to have some new leaders walking in that will have new ideas and experiences to draw from as well.
I mean, most oftentimes I might receive information from a parent and it's really a different question or information that they need. So I take your point very well on that. I just really want as quickly as possible for our students to have success and demonstrated good experience, because oftentimes we hear that they aren't. And I want to do what we can as a board to maybe quickly assemble groups. I think that's within our prerogative to do. We can establish special committees. We can do that. We can get things rolling and support, and so it's not all administrative work. We can do something as a board to really help and include the community and the parents in the process.
Ms. Fraley.
To piggyback on what Ms. Mufeld brought up, I appreciate that it's been raised that Mr. Pinion's coming in and there will be an action plan in place. And, it's April. That means we still have April, May, and a little bit of June. So to Ms. Mufeld's point, like in terms of quick wins, one of the things that I found myself thinking about specific to communication is like what we call in my world process maps, like so that we could say to parents, here's the process you follow so that there is this accessibility. And that's something that it feels like that's something really concrete and short and manageable and could probably be created in a couple of, days, weeks, and get that out. And so again, I'm going to push you back to Ms. Mufeld's question. Quick wins, things that you think we could do quickly, somewhat easily, knowing that people are transitioning out and new people are transitioning in. And that's not to say that the big structural systems and practices and policies don't need to be addressed. I feel like that's more of a little bit longer term so that we're able to start the next year strong. But I'm also thinking about like short term. What can we do in the next two months?
Even thinking about a communication plan, when you talk about that mapping and thinking about when people have that question and that concern, who do they go to? And do all of your administrators in your buildings also know where to direct people to? Or can they answer some of those questions instead of having to push them up to a higher district level? But when I think about some of those communication pieces, some low-hanging fruit. There were questions about like transportation. When there's a bus issue, we don't know about it if we have this transportation. Yet if your child's on Go Kid Go, they have an app. So starting with How do we communicate? I was an elementary principal at one point, right? I understand the phone calls you get when a bus is 45 minutes late. How are we communicating? This has nothing to do with special ed, right? But these were concerns that parents had. How are we communicating with our parents from a level of, there's a late bus, I don't know about it, my child's not home, it's 45 minutes past their time, I've still not received a call. To me, you probably have a phone system that you should be able to engage with and quickly send out that robotic call to say, let's help with that. I would really start with communication and mapping more specifically some of the parent concerns, some of the things that were included in the report as far as their comments. And then looking at how are we doing some of these pieces district-wide, especially looking at our elementary students, because parents are concerned when their 8-year-old is not showing up on a bus. That would be just a couple of quick wins. I would also say there was a stellar team, and Dr. Means, I know I brought up her name, really taking a look at your MSS structure. While it's not a quick win, I do believe there are some pieces that could be put in place very quickly by the start of the school year to ensure that you start some student services teams within your buildings to be talking about student progress. Because there is a team, I want to say her name was Nikki, elementary principal, and there was a school psych. They have the process worked out. So how are we using that to employ that to other school sites? And your middle schools have really strong schedules that support the co-plan to co-serve. How are we using that in other locations? So they might seem like bigger pieces, but when you take them in smaller buckets, you'll be able to employ them across the district because you already have the expertise happening.
My next question is, I'm assuming you've done similar audits in other districts. Where were places that you saw that we were sort of like on par? Where were places that you feel like we were stronger than other places? And of the places where we need to grow, are there other districts that you would publicly say, you know, so-and-so does this really well, you should be talking to them? I just want to make sure that we're not like all just in ourselves and that
I appreciate that. Not only through formal audits, but through other work that we do through the agency. I would say TOSA is known as a leader in some of your inclusive practices. Really, especially I'll say in your high school models, because that's not happening in all places in our CISA 1 region. And so I think kudos to the special education team for really working on some of those inclusive practices at the elementary, but all the way up through high school where that sometimes gets more challenging. Where I feel the district really is in need of some additional support is around your multi-level systems of support and those tier 1 and tier 2, tier 3 interventions, both academically and social emotionally. At the high school level, having a crisis response plan in place. So when there is a student suicide, other critical incident, there's a plan in place already for people to take action on. That was another one of those, when you talk about, I don't know if it's a quick win, but something quickly for Mr. Pinion to pull together is a district team. There's a consortium that started at CISA 1 that would be perfect for the team to engage with. So Mr. Pinion and his team can engage with the work together and create it together. And there's a structure there for them to do it instead of trying to create it from scratch. Other districts in our region have been engaging with that and have found it very successful. And so I think that's both a opportunity for you and a fairly easy way to engage and come up with a really valuable document. And partner with some other districts in our region to do that.
Are you done?
I'm good for now.
Two questions. One is sort of generic, one's kind of specific. We talked about parent involvement on committees and things like that. Obviously, we're moving forward, Dr. Means, with our strategic plan and committee and things like that. Have we made sure that some of these parents and things like that are involved with them, or are there additional things we can do there? Certainly one, it's one thing to have a standalone committee. More importantly, I think that they're involved in all committees. So I'm just kind of looking to try to gauge where we stand with our strategic planning committee.
We have a strategic planning steering committee.
And we kind of reached out, made sure that these parents are involved in some way, or made it at least the opportunity available to them.
Yes.
Great. Second question I had was more specific. There's a line in the report that talks about, and I'll just read it because I'm not sure I understand it. Wauwatosa also has 9 private schools within district boundaries. In recent years, there has been an increase in special education and 504 evaluation referrals for evaluations. This has pressed the capacity of diagnostic and school psychologist staff. Is that private schools referring them to us for evaluation because they don't have the resources and expertise? Am I understanding this right? Can you just kind of talk about that issue?
I sure can. The Wauwatosa School District is required to provide child find to all of the students in your region, including those attending private schools. So it's a Wauwatosa School District's responsibility to complete those evaluations. If there is a referral for a 504 or special education referral, the Wauwatosa School District is required to provide that by law. And so as your private schools or families are looking for additional information, they will come to the referral will be made to the TOSA School District, and you need to follow the typical guidelines and timelines for conducting that evaluation in a timely manner. So it's not that, well, the private schools don't have the expertise, nor do they need to, because it's the public school's obligation to carry that out.
So when we say they refer to us for evaluation, is that followed by services and that they are transferred to our schools? That may or may not happen.
May or may not happen. And then with, I won't get deep into it, but private school scholarships, special needs scholarships, other charter opportunities, they may need that evaluation in that individual education program to take back to their private school for other reasons. So they may or may not come to you for the services. It depends.
And so how is funding handled for that? So as a public school, we did not receive funding for that child because they're at the private school, but yet we're providing services for them. Is
Correct.
Correct.
So you can use flow through funding. You can use some of your federal funding to cover those expenses, but you can still receive your state. Just drew a blank on reimbursement, categorical aid reimbursement. As well for those positions if it's not coming from your federal dollars.
Thank you. I guess maybe this question is for Dr. Mead. So we talked a little bit about some of the short-term things that could be done in the coming months. In terms of the longer-term plan, the response, like the management letter, I guess, right, to an audit, when do you think that would be coming to the board, and will it be like presented formally as a response to the audit to say, we heard this audit, now in response to the audit, here are all of the things that we believe we must do as a result of that? And will that opinion be based not just on our own like review of the audit, but will that be based on, our team partnering with user groups, the families, whatever, the other people that are interested to come up with that response? Or how will that, tell me how that longer term plan will come to life and when you think it might, just for expectation's sake, when do you think that might be coming? Not that we could say for sure, but just like ballpark, even if it's a season.
I think it's already started. So Mr. Pinion is using the audit report to start forming some of the ideas that he thinks we need to start working on. The audit report is guiding the hiring process for the next director of special education. The reason why we've created the position of a director of student success, and I want to make sure we take enough time to explain this. In the past, the Wauwatosa School District had 2 directors of elementary education and a director of secondary education. Those individuals were also given the duties of taking care of student services. So the people who are counselors, social workers, mainly, those people reported to them. And so they were general administrators. They didn't have the lens of having walked and worked as a social worker or counselor in the past. As many of you know, I have enough experience, and I was here once before in the role of Director of Human Resources. When I was here the first time, there was a Director of Student Services who was a former counselor and led the counselors and social workers, Dr. Naku, for those of you who were here, Marianne. So we lost that infrastructure. What you are seeing in the audit, I believe, is we have people at our school levels who have really worked hard to keep those structures together. So back to your question, Mr. Pinion, along with the new hires and using the audit as a guide, and in fact, I've talked to some candidates who said, I've read the audit, I can do that work. I would embrace the work. They will collaborate with our parents and teachers and other staff members to say, what do we want our district vision to be? Because when, as you know, I've stepped in as the Director of Student Services this year. And when I meet, and tomorrow I have a meeting with the counselors and social workers and school psychs, they will say the most frustrating part of their job right now is that there isn't a district direction. So the multi-layers of support systems, or MLSS, that's, sometimes we have alphabet soup in education. You may have heard of RTI years ago. This is the new iteration of RTI. And the quick and dirty response or description of MLSS is there should be some type of structure that each school can gather around and look at both the social, emotional, and academic progress of a child. There should be a structure that is helping that process. We don't have a district structure right now. There are certain schools who have structures, but we don't have a district structure. And our counselors and social workers are making the argument, boy, if we had that type of structure, we could be more effective. Our classroom teachers, because I think there was a question that I received from the board, which a board member had said, so what's the if we were doing a Venn diagram, what's the nexus between this report with student services and special ed and what we receive with curriculum instruction and assessment? And I think that middle ground would be, we don't have a structure to provide time for our teachers and our professionals to talk about what interventions can we use to work with students and to see if they work. So it's the equivalent of going to the hospital and someone just giving you medicine that may not work for you. That's what we're doing with students in some cases. So back to the management response to this report, I would suspect that by October, Mr. Pinion will have enough time to work with his team to come back and say, here are the big chunks of the work that we need to do. I have an opinion of what that should be, but who cares what I think? But I think you're hearing it through the report. MLSS is a very important component. You've heard it from teachers. We don't have a crisis team to handle situations when there's a big fight in the school and now you have to calm things down. Or we heard it throughout the school year. What happens when a student is, we use the terminology dysregulated. Some other people may use the words, they're not able to really comply to the rules that the school has put in place. How do we work with those students? because what we're finding is that principals, teachers, all the way down the line, they're looking for strategies. That was the logic behind the ESSER plan of having behavioral specialists. We're seeing that there's certain characteristics and challenges that some of our students are coming to school with that we've never seen before. And some people will say, well, it's because of COVID. If you really sit down with a teacher, they will say, we saw these things pre-COVID. This was happening before COVID. Maybe COVID has exacerbated the situation, but it was here. And it was there was a pressure being placed on the organization to put systems in place to address those needs. So succinctly, again, I would say that Mr. Pinion and his team will have some type of management response by October. I think Mr. Doman nailed it earlier. This work will be embedded in our strategic plan, which we need to have we will have a dashboard that will be public facing, that you can look at it and say, what are you doing? What type of progress are you making? Those are the types of things that I think I'm hearing from the public we need to do. There's been a lot of conversation, if I may, about parent groups and engaging our special education families. I don't want to give the impression that we don't have a communication loop in a committee of special education families. Right now, we do. So I don't want to give that impression. We have that group in place right now. What I've noticed in talking with some of our families are not comfortable with that group. So our current director of special education does have a group, and she does meet with them, and they do communicate, and they have been trained by CISA in the CISA One network. That is in place. So I don't want to give that impression, but there is a group of our special education families who have, for whatever reasons they've chosen, they don't engage with that group as much. I think it goes back to what you heard Sue say earlier. Maybe the construction of how the group engages has not been pleasing to a certain segment of that population. And so they've chosen, or they're disappointed with how it's structured, and they've chosen not to engage. Is that a fair statement?
I think that's a fair statement. And I also believe you're a larger district, right? So trying to find those mechanisms, more than one mechanism might be necessary to engage families, right? That looks different for different people. And then, as I said, continuing to work on that proactive stance so people don't feel that they need to fight for everything, right? And I think as you're working on engaging people in the conversation right away from the planning phase of it, I think that will be beneficial.
I think there's a culture right now where some of our families feel that they have to be combative with our team because there hasn't been a lot of progress from their perspective. And so they've come to me to say, Dr. Means, this is not a healthy environment. Can you help us? And I don't think anyone means any harm. I don't think anyone means it to be combative, but it has become such. And that's unfortunate for the kids at the core and for the families who are looking for our support. So and candidly, I think some of our internal staff have said they feel that the environment, they're not the best professional they can be anymore because of the environment. So it's really important for us, so thank you, Mr. Rowland, for the opportunity. As I look at things, our special education team, we're really excited about hiring a new director of special education. That's going to be good. We're equally excited about hiring a director of student success because we failed our counselors and our social workers in giving them a district perspective on how things should function. As you heard from Sue, some of our schools really do a good job with mental health support, and some of our schools don't have those systems in place. And so from what I've heard from our counselors and social workers is that they're looking for a district perspective. And I think that's where Luke's opinion will be very valuable to us. but the principals and teachers are excited to have someone who will be our director of student success, someone who will really pay attention to what is our counseling curriculum, how do we teach character education and social emotional learning, and that's building by building right now. That's how we approach that work, and so there's a lot of excited people about who's going to come on board, and they're very anxious to engage our community to develop a plan that we will embed in our strategic plan.
So just to level set, I guess, because that could be a very long presentation. Or are you thinking it's going to be abbreviated, kind of like a roadmap? Not that you have to predict what a report that would be in 6 months would be, but kind of like, what do you think that the board will get? Will it be specifics like that? Will it be higher level? I think there's an appetite to go a layer deeper, I think, amongst the board, amongst the community, to say, like, what are the details?
Not to project, and I love the fact that Mr. Rowland has created some opportunities for the new board to have meetings outside of your typical meeting sessions. So that's awesome, because my prediction would be it would be helpful for the chief academic officer or our chief of pupil and family supports to have a special session with the board to unpack all of these things. So thank you for those extra meetings. Because I think when you bring a new team together, and that's what we're talking about, when you bring a new team together, everyone needs to understand what work are we trying to accomplish. And how will that work be accomplished? Not just talking past people, but really giving the board an opportunity to look at the work and letting the public see it so it's transparent. I think sometimes when you try to do these presentations at a board meeting, it gets too rushed.
Sure.
And so I remember last May, you had a meeting just for the teaching and learning team to unpack. So where are we trying to go? I think it would be appropriate for you to have a similar opportunity with your new CFO and your new chief of pupil and family supports and your new chief academic officer to unpack and to say, here's our portion of the strategic plan. Here's what you can hold us accountable for, not only for the board to hear it, but then for the public to hear it as well.
Thank
you. Mr. Meyer.
So my experience is that if a good idea is said by a board member, the more board members that endorse it and ratify it, the more intense the heat map is on what the board said. So I want to strongly endorse what Mrs. Neufeld said about the urgency. And I'm not doing justice to what you said, but there was the urgency, and then Mrs. Fraley endorsed that. And, observing obviously that systems take how long they take, and we don't want to have something fast and have it not be done well. On the other hand, there's specific quick hit kinds of things that perhaps we can do in the communication area. So I'll sort of layer on top of that, Dr. Means, I would like you to identify those quick hits and the techniques you're going to use to do them. I mean, like this stuff where there's people who don't feel they're being served by this particular group, and maybe there's some other technique. I mean, as you said, I endorse that too. This is about the children. So if adults are having adult things, we want to bust through that and service the children, of course. Can you let us know what those? I mean, I don't want to tell you what the quick hits are because you're managing things. I don't want to tell you what the quick hit technique is to fill the gap, but can you come back to us and tell us what you've specifically identified as a quick hit or low-hanging fruit, or however you want to say it, and what technique you brought to bear to do that. So I don't want to be suggesting a specific thing to you. I want to ask that you come back to us with that information about what we're able to do quickly and do it well enough to make it not a throwaway of the money, in order to, hear what Mrs. Neufeld said and what Mrs. Fraley said and what I'm endorsing as well. Thank you.
Any other board questions or comments on the side?
Just Mr. Doman, could we hear from some of the focus group members during the report? Or are we going to wait for non-agenda or agenda
Yeah,
public
we have
comment?
public comment item next.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Dodd. Appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for having me tonight and for doing the audit. Thank you.
We'll move on to final public comment on items on the agenda or items not on the agenda. So you're free to come forward and speak on anything that we discussed tonight or something that was not on the agenda. We'll start with folks in the room. Please come forward, state your name and address. You have 3 minutes. If you're online, please raise your hand and we will get to you after we get to the folks in the room.
Hello, Troy Seabrook, 4556 North 107th Street. Just 2 quick things, because I'll be here a lot, so I'll make a little bit of comments. But to the constituents of TOSA, I want to say I apologize that I haven't been around enough to watch school board meetings and do different things, and getting back into it now, so you'll see my face more often. To the school board, I only have one thing to say, and that word is transparency. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, sir.
Are you taking comments on any subject now?
Yeah. Yes, sir. Anything that was on the agenda or anything else? You state your name and address and you have 3 minutes.
I don't hear well, so.
Not a problem.
TOSA East High School was opened in 1934. And some significant changes were made to it in 1970 that have been partially undone, namely exposing murals and so forth. But I think the next step would be to rebuild the tower. And I will pay for it, to rebuild the tower. Now, what I need, of course, I'd like to have at least 5 positive votes from the board. And then I will need a copy of the blueprints so that we can go over these with potential contractors and get some prices. And in order for me, and the other thing I will need will be access to the building. Now, the first thing we'll do is we'll have to assess the foundation to see if the foundation's strong enough to hold a new tower. It probably is. And then I will hire an architect and pay for the architect, obviously. So what I need from the board, I ran this by Nick Hughes, and he thought it was a great idea. And I ran it by Dr. Ertl, and he thought it was a great idea. And I ran it by your president, and he referred me to Dr. Means. And Dr. Means sent me an email, very enthusiastic. And so we set up a meeting, and things didn't go so well from there on. I went to the appointed time. After waiting 30 minutes, a woman came out and said that Dr. Means is busy. So, of course, I went home. And it looks as if we're going to do this, we're going to have to do it with little or no help from Dr. Means. So what I need now is I need a letter on district stationery authorizing the Milwaukee Public Museum to furnish me with copies of the architectural drawings. They won't give them to me without that letter. And then I will need, after we get those drawings, we'll need access to the building. The roof mainly, but the inside of the building too. Any questions?
Thank you, sir. This isn't a question and answer. We appreciate the comments and we'll take them under advisement.
May I add a comment? Prior to the referendum study, there was a study of the historical significance of all of our buildings. And the significance of that part of Wauwatosa Avenue didn't lie in one building, but it was involved with there being a series of buildings in a small stretch of road that were of similar historical vintage. And I'm sure I'm using the wrong words. And I seem to recall that the removal of the tower was not favorable to the architectural significance of that stretch of Wauwatosa Avenue. That the tower really does or would enhance the historical value of that stretch of Wauwatosa Avenue. And indeed, aligned with this, there was a desire to have the new Lincoln School have some architectural facing that was consistent with the rest of those buildings, the Women's Club and the Irish Cultural Center, for example, and that series, including Wauwatosa East, that series of buildings was of value to the community for its consistency in a region of the city. So I, support this. If I can do anything to, help, let me know. I'm an old retired guy now, so I have time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Meyer. Any other public comment this evening? Please come forward, state your name and address, and you have 3 minutes.
Yes, Emily Peters, 2525 North 82nd Street. I'm a parent of 3 sons, all of which have matriculated here in Wauwatosa. All of my sons are incredible, special people, and 2 of them have spent their years here in Tosa in the special education program. The experiences we as parents of special children have are wonderful and frustrating. Our kids all have the same needs as other students, but require some extra help. As most parents experience lots of firsts in school with their students, the first play date, the first sports game, the first dance, we, the parents of special education students, experience lots of lasts. Last to walk, the last to talk, the last to read, the last to get picked for a team, the last to get invited to a birthday party. While we come to accept these lasts, the one place in which we do not expect to be put last is in their education. Here in Wauwatosa, under the purview of this board, we did not expect to be put last to get the board's attention and priority for what our special students need. We expected all of you to be taking responsibility that our kids would have the proper teachers, supports, and resources to ensure they could succeed. As this audit reports, you did not take that responsibility seriously. We, parents, have had to fight against a system of neglect. We've had to beg for resources and fight for our kids' rights. An example of this was during the pandemic when the school shut down and our district did not provide the services defined as legally bound in our students' IEPs. Another example is when the busing contractor would leave our children waiting for hours to be picked up or dropped off from school. If it were not for parents demanding change, there would have been no action taken on these issues. I'm very disappointed once again in this board, in which so many of you have overseen the special education mess for years. I'm thankful to Dr. Means, as he seems to be advocating for us. The district has gone out of their way to hire diversity coaches to ensure that our district focuses on students of color and LGBTQ students, but have neglected to address a very important group, the special education student. You can no longer ignore us. You have to do better. Please put your attention on the students that need it most. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jen Janowski, 2609 North 90th Street. I'm not going to be nearly as eloquent as Emily here, but I have the same amount of passion, and you almost brought me to tears because we all feel it. All of us do. So don't for a second think that she's isolated in her feelings, because we've all been there. Every single one of the things that she said. Mr. Meyer, thank you for reading the report. I would encourage you all to read it front to back. Do not stop at the summary. It does not represent all of the comments. There are definitely some things that are themes that you did a great job of trying to summarize the theme, but there were some additional themes that came out to me. One, we're understaffed in special ed across the board. We talk about retention of staff, and I would love to hear at some point in time what our attrition rates are compared to others. I know we said we have a great school district and we attract great talent, but we also have heard throughout the report that we're losing people. The comments all over this report were we're losing good people, we're losing good people. So I was surprised to hear your summary that says we're attracting good people. How does that balance out? I don't know. You guys hopefully do know that answer. My son has been fortunate in having great staff, and I definitely echo the comments that Mrs. Doyle's brought to bear here, is that we've had excellent teachers and excellent aides all the way through. I think where you'll see in the report also, if you take the time to read the comments, is where they feel that their hands are tied, that they don't have the time, that they don't have the support to do the co-teaching, the collaboration that they need to do their jobs. One of the things that also jumped out at me as a theme was this invisible wall between student services and special ed. If you're in special ed, you don't get access to the student services resources and vice versa. And why does that wall exist? That's not right. And even some comments that were in this report about if you make it to special ed, then no longer do you have the same behavioral reporting that you used to. And also the concern that many of the staff are afraid of the behavior problems that they're dealing with, and they're not supported in dealing with this. So we do have some major concerns. And as a parent of someone with special needs that can't come home and tell me what he's seeing and experiencing, I worry about that. I mean, I worry about a lot of stuff, but that's one of them. So I have many more things to say. I thank you for the time for doing the audit. I definitely think you owe it to the 13% of the students that have special ed to read the report front to back. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Michelle Hughes. I live at 2001 North 119th Street. Just wrote a few things down to share our family's perspective over the last 8 years. Dr. Means, members of the school board, thank you for this opportunity to speak on this very important, this very important topic to me and my family. Our school experience was always really positive, and when our youngest presented with speech and language delay and later a learning disability, we were confident that our wonderful school would help our student and support our family. Unfortunately, that has not been our experience over the last 8 years. I've waited 8 years for this moment. I want to thank Dr. Means for listening to parents, really listening to our concerns. This report validates every special education parent's concerns over lack of services, lack of accountability, lack of support in classrooms. These inadequacies have negatively affected this program and interfere with students being able to reach their fullest potential. I would like to thank classroom teachers and staff who have worked with our son over the last 8 years. Your dedication and hard work to students you serve does not go unnoticed. Classroom teachers and staff have been put in impossible situations to modify schoolwork, to provide educational solutions for special education students, as well as meeting the needs of the other students in their classroom. The lack of classroom support has resulted in staff having to wear many hats. These demands set our teachers and our students up for failure. My son is currently in the 5th grade. He's been a special education student since he was 3 years old. In the beginning, we trusted the district would help our son and thought that they had our backs. For the first few years, we did as we were told and did not question the process. We started to see cracks in the system when our son was in 1st grade. There were huge disconnects between his IEP goals and what was actually being implemented in the classroom. There seemed to be a real lack of understanding of our son's needs. By the second grade, we made the decision to take matters into our own hands and hire an academic coach to work with our son. Our son lacks basic foundational skills to succeed alongside his peers. He struggles in areas of reading, writing, and math. I fear the bar has been set very low for our special education students due to lack of services, accountability, and support. Special education students who aren't receiving proper services are less likely to be engaged in their classroom learning, have heightened levels of frustration, and do not feel part of the classroom community. As a special education parent, I'm asking the district and board for more accountability, improved services, more support for students, staff, and parents. And I just would like to comment on the culture of the special education, being in that part of that group. It is really toxic right now. So I think there's many of us that don't feel heard or welcome to some of the different meetings. And so I think that needs to be repaired. And I think a lot of people maybe don't even trust in this report, because I was hoping more people would come. But I think people we'll get to you, we'll get to you, we'll get to you. Well, my son's going to be in middle school, so I'm giving you 3 years. Because that's the other thing. We have other kids in the district. So we've had to make decisions in our home. Do we uproot all our children to go to a district that maybe does provide better special services? Our older kids have relationships. They're thriving. We just want our little guy to thrive too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sandy Kraus, 1525 North 69th Street. I would be in the category you would call a district alumni parent. I have a 19 and 24-year-old who went through this district for most of, however, not all of their school years, because we went through so many battles, we got to the point where we pulled out and did better elsewhere. Now, what I want to say to you is something that I hear because I work with adults on the autism spectrum. Nothing about us without us. You, Dr. Means, mentioned a parent committee. For years, I would come to the parent committee, and it was literally twice a year a presentation. It was not a committee, it was not feedback, it was not input from the parents. The parents get frustrated because we're looking out for our kids, and you know who knows our kids the best? It's us. We do. And you have this very valuable resource with these people in this room who will give you their heart and soul to not only help their own kids, to help the other kids in the district that need help. The parents that I worked with back when my kids were in school, we worked with each other. We became a united team, and we are still a united team of special education alumni parents from the district. We're ready to step in and help with that piece. When I said this about parents being involved, parents should be involved not only in a committee involving the changes that need to be made in special education, they need to be involved in the hiring of the new director. And I would further challenge you to say that there are students in your high school levels especially, there are students who have the ability to communicate and tell you what they need. Let some of the students that are being served also be part of that communication and feedback that you get for hiring of the new director, and also for what's going forward in the district to help resolve some of these issues with special education. And I want you to keep in mind that back in my day, we didn't have as many choices, but it was mentioned about all the private schools in the district. That's where some of the kids go when the district fails you. And now we have the funding follow us. That happened because of things that happened here in this district. There was a group of parents in Wauwatosa who were very active in getting that legislation passed because of the failures that happened in the special ed. Now is a chance for you to change that and fix that for the future.
Thank you.
Deb Falk-Palak, Emily Peters, I can't even look at you right now. What you said is so true, and your yellow jacket is blinding me. But Emily is right. The 7 of you have failed the special education community and our former superintendent. You have. How many people need to come to the microphone? How many years must we wait? Is it so hard to develop a committee to collaborate and start to look at issues? What is so hard about it? Thank you, Mary Jo Randall. We know she's all about board policy. Board policy 9140. You can use that now to develop a committee on special education. We can't wait till September, what's listed on the board agenda. We can't wait until October. Dr. Means, I think about the meeting at Whitman where a parent brought up something and you said, I had no idea we weren't doing that. Let's fix it. It got fixed for this summer. We have to start today. We can't wait. We're not waiting for Superman. We're not waiting for Wonder Woman. They're not coming. You have those people that have been coming here for years advocating. It's not hard to collaborate and form a committee. Stakeholders, we are stakeholders in this district. I agree. We had a survey with the whole community before Dr. Means was hired to look at what are the attributes, the qualities, the things. I understand Wauwatosa West parents have received one to hire the new principal. Please send something out to the 937 children this year who have disabilities, their families, for the new special education director. Why can't we have a voice in that when we've done it with other hiring? The group, Dr. Means, that you speak of, for 17 years I've attended that group. I've probably missed 5 meetings. I know you've never come to one of the groups. It's not, and nor has anybody sitting on this board come to one. It's not like you discuss. We're being spoken at, talked to, presentations, which are wonderful. It's wonderful to have presentations, but there's no collaboration happening. This year, honestly, I feel the issue that was brought up and ignored for 3 times this year will end up as an IDEA complaint to DPI. Again, not being listened to. I am asking you now to enact this broader policy, use whatever you want to use. Somebody on this board, stand up and say, we can form a committee now to start dealing with some of these issues. The easy issues, the more difficult issues, we need to start this now. These children can't wait. They cannot wait. You've heard enough. There have been resources brought to your attention, and the can keeps getting kicked down the road. You have to look at your responsibility of sitting and being silent and not doing anything. It's time. It's beyond time that something gets done. I'm asking somebody on this board to be brave enough to stand up and say, let's work with our community members who want nothing more to help this district so that all children can get help with disabilities.
Hi, my name is Heather Burke. I live at 217 North 89th Street. I'm a parent to 3 kids. One of them has been identified with disability since the age of 3. We spent 6 years in public schools in a different school district where my child was punished more often than he was helped. And it just kept continuing until it led to an event that I'm not going to repeat, but know that as a result of that event and the events that followed, both my child and I have been diagnosed with PTSD. We moved to Wauwatosa 2 years ago and have been homeschooling ever since. We are trying to heal and move forward, and my husband and I work opposite shifts, and we're teaching our kids and doing all of the things that other parents do. And I know I'm preaching to the choir here. I'm exhausted. My kids miss school, and while I could send 2 of my kids to school, and I'm sure it would be fine, I can't get past the idea that the measure of a community is its ability to care for its most vulnerable populations. And as I sat in the focus group and I read the report, I realized that our move 2 years ago was basically a lateral move. I am terrified to send my son into your buildings. That is in no way a slight to the staff who are dedicated in working with our kids. It is a reflection of a broken educational system. I am here tonight to reiterate what everyone else is saying. We need to include stakeholder voices including parents, staff, and students when appropriate at the table when it comes to hiring a new special education director, and to ask you to please extend those practices to every position within this district that is hired to serve a marginalized population. We do know what our kids need. We have voices and they need to be heard. I realize this will make the hiring process take longer, but these are decisions that we cannot afford to rush. If we want to be that lighthouse district that I keep hearing about, we need to start doing things in ways that no one else is doing or has done. Lastly, as I have been sitting in this meeting and I have been just watching the room, this is very much what it is like to be a parent of a child with special needs. You are running your meeting correctly. I'm not here to tell you you're running a school board meeting incorrectly, but there is a group of people sitting in a closed circle up here discussing what our kids need and how to fix it, and we are over here. And we're not in the conversation, and we're having our own conversation, and we're trying to figure out what's going on, and we're getting, the communication is bad. And again, this is how a school board meeting is run. I get that, but please remember this image of you all sitting here and us back here. Thank you.
Thank you.
John McLuhan, 772 North 116th Street. I really don't know what to say. To listen to this report and realize that the school district from which I graduated, and which my three kids will have graduated come this June, has so seriously let down the most vulnerable populations in their special needs students. My middle child had some special needs, but he's better off than most. Unfortunately, he was part of the unfortunate graduating class of 2020 for which there was none, and for which the school board seriously let their special needs students down, particularly at that point in time. He does struggle a bit to this day as a result of some things that have gone on, and I don't want to see any other students go through that. We have an opportunity tonight to take action to move forward. Again, as we cannot wait till September, till October, till whatever we need to do things has to be started tonight. Every one of these board members here sitting in front of me tonight have to think about what can be done starting tonight or tomorrow morning to make improvements to the point in time that we get to hire a new special ed coordinator, so we can figure out those steps that need to be taken. There are things that can be done that should be started tonight. We cannot wait any longer till the next person slips through the cracks and is affected for the rest of their lives. The process that needs to begin tonight.
Is it easier for us to bring you the microphone? Yeah. Yeah. We're happy to do that.
Hello, I'm Julie Alexander, 7224 West State Street, Unit 1A, Wauwatosa. Basically, I'm a person with a disability. I also am a member of the Wauwatosa Committee for Citizens with Disabilities, which is a committee that's been following disability issues, especially with parents. And you've seen me at most of these meetings for the past year and a half. It's interesting to me to come to meeting because this is a committee that basically I've seen most of the agendas, and most of the agendas don't even have disability on it, even though we talk about issues and we'd like to talk about them a little bit more, and they never get put onto the agenda. I also know that most candidates for school board talked about disability issues, and it's really interesting because they don't talk about disability issues during the meetings, only when they want to get elected. Which sounded really interesting to me. It's like, well, I don't know. So one of the things I know our committee really is interested in helping with parents and helping with students. I went through special ed through most of my life, so I'm pretty familiar with a lot of things like that. I also work for an agency that works with people with disabilities, and it's also a civil rights agency. So I'm willing to serve and help these parents, and basically also know a lot about resources. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Barbara Sweeney, E39 North 67th Street. When I heard that report, thank you very much for doing it, but I felt like I was sitting in an alternate report, especially when it came to the inclusiveness of the junior high and the high school. My daughter finished her high school 10 years sitting on the floor eating her lunch by the lockers. Not one student, not one adult came to make sure she could sit at a table. That's the social aspect. The school part was isolation, islands of isolation within the classroom. We talked about needing to put the infrastructure there and getting all these wonderful teachers. I have to say that my experience through both the junior high and the high school, I did not meet with the highest amount of integrity with a lot of our people who were my daughter, standing in front of my daughter. And when we hear about all the great aides, I question how we had an aide that was kept in the district that was able to physically harm two people, with the superintendent and the special education director being well aware and only putting them at a different school. It's those kind of things when I hear how great, and yet those are the people that are standing in front of our children, it's really hurtful. It was also hard sitting here when parents do come and ask for these things year after year after year. And I've heard so many parents speak so eloquently. And then I've heard also that staff and teachers are having a hard time doing their job because of the requests and the demands of some of the parents. It's after just what appears like complete neglect that we're frustrated, we're frightened, we want the best for our children, and I feel like I was admonished for caring that much. And I'd like to second, there's so many people in this room that will go above and beyond, not only for their own child, but would like to work collegially, collaboratively with the district. And I feel that what we have to say falls on deaf ears. And if we're going to talk about radical equity, I think you have to think about this, because when we raise the level of education for students with special needs, we also close the gaps for Black, brown, and socially disadvantaged individuals. And we also have, I forgot the word, disproportionality in our district at a high rate. And that means African American students of color are over-identified as special education, and they don't have access to the same level of curriculum that they should have. And so they're put in classes that are not challenging. We talked about, we're going to address the curriculums later. And then we also mentioned about the behavioral that we're seeing not only in COVID, but prior to COVID. There's a quick line in special education that you're either going to tune out or act out. If you're not engaging that student with meaningful education, they're going to act out or they'll tune out. And that's what we have. That's why fights start. That's why kids become disengaged. That's why they might have one of the reasons they might have mental health issues, because they see hopelessness and helplessness. And it's really, really frustrating that nobody can seem to listen to this and understand it. It's really frustrating. I'm one of those parents that took my student to the private schools after whatever happened during COVID. We were denied an education. We were not given extended services. We didn't even have books or curriculum for junior high and high school until I complained. Had to go through a due process to get a different curriculum. But the silver lining in all that, with the resolution agreement that I engineered, my daughter had a good curriculum, and at home working with me, she gained 3 years of reading during COVID. It was that specialized education that every student should have to learn. I know my daughter is currently in a wonderful program. She's repeating high school for 2 more years. And I can see that it can be done. And it doesn't even need all the money, because I can tell you this program isn't awash in money. It does have funding, but what it has are those dedicated people that do the individualized education and specialize it for each and every student that they have. I just want you to think that if it can be done in one place, it can certainly be done in another. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment on agenda or non-agenda items from folks in the room?
Hi, it's Jen again. You had asked about Quick Hits, summer school and extended school year, not just for birth to 3, but also for the 18 to 21 years. There's a lot of opportunity to do better and do more there.
Thank you. All right, we'll close public comment for those in the room. Jamie, anyone online?
Yeah, we do have one hand raised. Julie Haskey, you have the microphone. Please state your name and address.
Hi, my name's Julia Haskey, 904 South Main Street, Saukville, Wisconsin. I teach at Madison Elementary School. I just want to say tonight, I tuned in a little bit late. I am not certified as a special ed teacher. I am certified to teach elementary level education. My administrative license is certified to teach older grades. But I will say I echo the thoughts of the parents tonight. And as someone who's worked in the system, we are very short-staffed right now. After the pandemic, it's a very hard issue. But I just want to echo what I heard the parents say tonight. Personally, as someone that works with 100% inclusion, parents are absolutely the best resource we have, and they know their kids the best. So I want to support them tonight and say we need their voices. They know their kids the best, and we need to support them with whatever resources they can provide us to help their kids the best. So thank you.
Thank you.
There are no more hands raised.
All right. Thank you. Mr. Meyer.
Please, thank you. One additional comment. A theme I hear regarding the tower at East and regarding these comments just now on the special needs topic. There is a professional organization called the International Institute of Business Analysis. They have a methodology called the Business Analyst Body of Knowledge. They certify business analysts, and one of the certifications is a certified business analyst professional. I was so certified. I am now retired, and what those people do is they facilitate bringing stakeholders together to gather requirements, to find solutions, to propose solution strategies and specific program development. Those people do not dictate content. They facilitate people coming together. As we hear now, the knowledge is in our system, our community system. The skills to implement are in our system, and somehow we get stuck. So there are ways to address these things, to bring available resources to bear, either for architecture or for student needs. There seems to be a little bit of a missing ingredient here. And, with regards to that, and I've offered to be on committees with regards to substantive problems, solutions. It is in that vein that I've made that offer. It is not to dictate solutions. It is to, sort of traffic cop the drivers. And so I offer my time again. I'm starting to feel like I'm going to need vacation for my retirement, but I'm available if you wish to give me, get me involved. I'll thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Meyer. All right, we'll move on to adjourn, but first I just wanted to offer my thanks to Mr. Rolland for his 6 years of service. It's been great to have you on the board. I've learned a lot from you. Appreciate your time as president as well. I know our community is better. Our parents are better, our teachers are better, and most importantly, our students are better for your time served. So thank you very much. Thank you. And with that, I will let you make the motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Newman, please call the roll.
Ms. Fraley? Yes. Mr. Meyer?
Yes.
Ms. Mufeld? Yes. Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. Rollin?
Yes.
Mr. Doman?
Yes, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.